I'm
This
sure that
conference will now be recorded.
I'd like us to get started. I'm sure that there are those who are going to join us as we go along, but it's really important that we start on time so that I can keep time and make sure I don't keep you for longer than the hour that I have committed. So welcome so much to this workshop. My name is Mucha Mlingo, and I'm part of a global network called 6 Seconds. And today we are talking about emotional well-being in this time of crisis. And this is a topic that's extremely important, considering the circumstances that we find ourselves in. Just so you are aware, I have muted the microphones, and what we're going to do as we're going through is, if you do need to speak, do jump in at any point, just unmute your microphone. And then we also have a chat box option. So as we go through, I will be asking you to share your thoughts, I'll be asking you to share your thoughts via chat. So feel free to type in the chat box, as you feel, as an answer to any of the questions that I may ask. And, I'm hoping that we'll have a lively interactive discussion as we are online. Okay, so, so as I mentioned, I'm part of a global organization called 6 Seconds. 6 Seconds is a global nonprofit network practicing and sharing the learnable, measurable skills of emotional intelligence. Founded in 1997, 6 Seconds is the first and largest organization that's 100% dedicated to the development of emotional intelligence. I run a boutique consultancy here in Kenya. My organization is called PTS Africa, and we are a 6 Seconds preferred partner in the region. And we're part of a global mission to have 1 billion people practicing emotional intelligence. And we believe that the skills of emotional intelligence are learnable and ultimately will transform us as individuals. As part of this global network, our mission field, if you'd like to call it, is the continent of Africa. And I truly am passionate about, helping us across the African continent to really grow and thrive utilizing the skill of emotional intelligence. When we think of the outbreak of the coronavirus, it has really impacted each of us in varying ways on a global scale. And it's understandable that during times like these, we may be feeling afraid, worried, anxious, and overwhelmed by the constantly changing alerts and media coverage that regard the spread of the virus. Never have we had access to so much information about something as we do right now. And sometimes that access to information isn't necessarily helping us. I want to start by asking you a question. What is the overriding emotion you have felt since the first case of coronavirus was announced here in Kenya? I remember it was a Friday, and actually I was in the middle of some training. And if you're joining us from outside of Kenya, you can, think of it from your country, wherever you are. What is the overriding emotion that you have felt since the first case was announced in your country? And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to share your thoughts on chat. So please just use the chat box, just type in what is the overriding emotion that you have felt. And welcome to all those who are joining us. You're very welcome. We have started. So what is the overriding feeling that you have felt? And emotions come in multiples, so you've probably felt many things, but I'd just like you to stop, close your eyes and think through what is the overriding emotion that you have felt over the last 14, over the last 21 days. And please just type it in the chat box. Okay, so I see anxiety, I see overwhelmed, a few fears. Anne says that we were at work and I remember feeling scared. Overwhelmed is another one. Please keep adding how you have felt, the overriding feeling. And remember, emotions do come in multiples, but what has been the overriding emotion that you have felt apprehensive. Thank you very much, Lena. Lisa says anxious. Angie said overwhelmed. Yeah, so there are very many things that we have been feeling. Please feel free to keep sharing how you have felt as a result. Sheer panic, Lena, thank you very much for sharing. So there are very many emotions that we have felt. James says confused. There are very many emotions that we have felt as a result of what is going on globally, this global phenomena. And never has there been a time where, like I said, we have had so much access to information. Never has there been a time where, you know, so much of who we are is defined by what is going on. The reality about our emotions is that often, you know, in most cases, we've never really been taught to understand, to process, to utilize emotions as the resource that they are. I want to share a quotation with you, and this quotation says, "Our feelings are our most genuine paths to knowledge." Our feelings are our most genuine path to knowledge. And this is a quote by Audre Lorde. Now, considering all those things that you have typed in, considering the feelings that you have typed in the chat box for those who were able to, and thank you so much for sharing. What do you think this quotation means? All right, so again, just feel free to type it up in the chat box. Our feelings are our most genuine paths to knowledge. What do you think that means? Considering what you have been feeling, you know, the question I asked before is, what is the overriding emotion that you have felt ever since, you know, COVID-19 was announced? What do you think this quotation means? You know, it's funny, when the first announcements came through of this virus, you know, in China, it seemed like something that was so far away, something that was so unrelated to who I was and unrelated to my life. But the reality is, very quickly, this thing spread, and we saw it move out of China, out of Asia. And, you know, initially, there were those conversations about how, oh, Africans must be immune because it's not yet in Africa. But we know the reality now, that it was just a moment of time. So considering what you feel about this current situation we find ourselves in, how would you explain this quotation? Our feelings are our most genuine paths to knowledge, by Audre Lorde. So I see here, Angie says it's important, it's critical to feel how we feel. Lena, thank you. You say it means that it's okay to feel all those feelings. It's what we should be feeling. Spectra, our feelings express the truth of our state. Thank you so much for those insightful thoughts. Please keep sharing. For those of you who've joined us, you're very welcome. We're talking about how we feel about this situation that we find ourselves in. And the question I had asked was, what is the overriding emotion that you have felt since COVID-19 was announced? If you're here, if you've dialed in from here in Kenya, since it was announced in Kenya, and if you're dialed in from anywhere else, since it was announced in your country. I see another comment here. I can't see the name yet, but it says, once I acknowledge my feelings, I can start exploring how to express and handle those feelings. Thank you. Thank you so much for your thoughts. And feel free to keep sharing. Our feelings are our most genuine paths to knowledge. What does that mean? The reality is that emotions are data. Emotions are not good or bad, they just are. Emotions that, you know, provide us with unpleasant feelings have traditionally, and to be honest, unfairly been labeled as negative emotions. People tend to want to avoid them, force them away, or silence them as soon as they emerge. And that is our reality when we are navigating situations like the one we find ourselves in. Benjamin has added, my feelings are a sensor to something happening on the inside that I need to respond to. Thank you very much for that, Benjamin. Emotions are data. Emotions are information. Emotions are insight. Anyone who's ever interacted with me and the sessions that, you know, I lead will know that statement. I say it often, over and over. Emotions are data. Emotions are insight. They let you know where you are in your life. They let you know where you are in your life, and if you need to make changes. Emotions are the body's way of letting you know you need to find time for yourself. Yes, this time may be filled with anxiety, this time may be filled with stress, but it's still time that you need to take to allow yourself to grow and heal. Overall, emotions provide guidance and leave room for improvement. Feeling your emotions is, in a way, a form of meditation and inner reflection. It allows you to connect with your body. Emotions are data, a message from yourself to yourself. And in this period of heightened uncertainty, many of us are experiencing heightened levels of stress. Earlier, I asked you to type in the chat box, what is the overriding emotion that you have felt ever since the COVID-19 was announced in your country? And, many of us are feeling heightened levels of stress. The reality is, as I mentioned, emotions are not good or bad. They just are. They are data. They are insight. While you may see stress or the heightened stress or the heightened fear, the heightened anxiety that you're feeling as a problem, it is actually an important tool if you pay attention to the signs. The emotions of stress are they're informational, they're informative. Stress is like a warning light. When the fuel light comes on in your car, it's to bring your attention to something important. It's to highlight something that's extremely important to you. I must admit that I'm really bad when it comes to managing my car. I don't know about the rest of you. And I'm one of those individuals who could very easily run out of fuel because I pay very little attention to the dashboard in my car. And unfortunately, very many of us operate in the same way. We do not pay keen attention to the information that is coming from our bodies, the insight that is coming, the insight that is supposed to help us so that we can navigate life. Listening to the messages behind our emotions will help us to learn more about our environment and learn more about ourselves. When we harness our curiosity and understand and try to understand the message behind our emotions, we actually reduce their intensity, and we are actually applying an effective emotions management technique. So let's go back to that overriding emotion that you have been feeling. Let's go back to that overriding emotion that you have been feeling. Welcome to those who've joined us since I began talking. One of the questions I asked first was, what is the overriding emotion that you have been feeling over the last 14, over the last 21 days? Emotions come in multiples, so you may be feeling many things. But what is the one that is overriding? What is the one that, overrides everything else? If we go back to that emotion and utilize the emotion as a tool, utilize the emotion as data, I'd like you to just close your eyes. Wherever you are, just close your eyes. And I want you to go back to that emotion you've been feeling of late. So think about that emotion that you've been feeling of late. Focus your attention on it. What else are you feeling? So emotions come in multiples, as I've said several times. What else are you feeling? Besides the overriding emotion, what else comes with that emotion? Close your eyes and think about it. Close your eyes and reflect. One of the things that's really important to do with our emotions is to dig deeper, to peel back the layers. And as you peel back the layers, the idea is to ask yourself, if this emotion is an ally, if this emotion is a friend, giving me insight, what is it trying to tell me? If this emotion is an ally, if I see this emotion as a friend, giving me advice, what would this friend be trying to tell me? I'm hoping you have a piece of paper near you, wherever you are, wherever you've signed into this webinar. I'd like you to just write that down. So start by writing down the overriding emotion that you're feeling, that you have been feeling over the last 14 days. And then just ask yourself, if this emotion was an ally, if this emotion was a friend giving me advice, what would it be trying to tell me? I'll give you 30 seconds. Just write that down. What insight is this emotion trying to give? Okay, as you think about this insight, ask yourself, how has this emotion been impacting your behavior of late? So we shared the overriding emotion that we have felt over the last 14, over the last 21 days. How has this emotion been showing up in your behavior? How has this emotion been showing up in your behavior? Make a note of that. How else? Because again, just the same way that emotions come in multiples, there may be very many ways that the behavior is manifest. So make a list, write down everything you've been feeling and how it's been showing up. So you may have been feeling heightened levels of anxiety. And the way that's been showing up is in a shortness as you interact with your children, perhaps the way you are giving instructions to your team. How has that emotion been impacting the way that you are behaving? And then the last thing I would ask as we do this self-reflective exercise is this. Is that behavior serving you? Is that behavior getting you the results that you desire? The reality is very many of us operate on autopilot, not checking in with ourselves, not understanding that the way we feel impacts the way we think and impacts the way we act. Thoughts, feelings, and actions are all very much intertwined. And when we don't stop to think about our thoughts, our feelings, our actions, we don't realize the impact that they have. So let's go back to where we started. What is the overriding emotion that you have felt over the last 14, 21 days? What else have you felt? Write all those feelings down. What else? You know, they say that you must go to 3 levels of questioning yourself. So what have you been feeling? What else have you been feeling? And what else? And how has this emotion been showing up in your behavior? How has this emotion been showing up in your behavior? And lastly, is that behavior serving you? Aristotle has described the statement that it is the definition of insanity to do the same thing and expect a different result. Emotional intelligence is about stopping to think about our thoughts, feelings, and actions and how they're interacting with each other. And ask ourselves whether or not this is serving us. And if it's not serving us, making a conscious decision to alter either our thoughts, our feelings, or our actions. And when we alter one, we impact the others. So open your eyes now. Hopefully you have had your eyes closed as we've been doing that self-reflective activity. What we've just done is emotional intelligence. You've considered your thoughts, your feelings, your actions as they are in this situation. In this group, we probably have a different level of understanding of what emotional intelligence is. So it will be useful at this stage to really come to a common understanding. What is emotional intelligence? I like the 6 seconds definition. Emotional intelligence is being smart with your feelings. It's understanding that emotions are data. Emotions are insight, and is making sure that you tap into that insight and utilize that insight for the decisions that you make each day. As a rule of thumb, try to analyze, question, and be curious about the source of each emotion that you have, even those emotions that are causing you discomfort. This way, you will gain some sort of insight about what the emotion is telling you. Furthermore, the more you understand the message the emotion is trying to convey, the less intense the emotion will be. If this emotion is associated to a conflict, problem solving will be so much easier as a result of your understanding of the situation, going deeper to understand the insight the emotion gives. And it will keep you from acting impulsively due to those unpleasant feelings. While it's important to make sure that you stay informed, we can be overwhelmed by what is going on around us. So what I'd like to do is just spend a few moments, talking about some of the things that we can do in this season of heightened uncertainty that will help us to practice greater emotional intelligence, because we've been talking about emotional intelligence. And I just want to spend some time. And like I said, for those of you who joined after we started, if you do have any questions, feel free to either write them down in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself and you can jump in and ask any other questions you have. So I'd like to just spend some time talking through some of the things that we can do. And then what we will do at the end is open up the last 20 minutes for questions, so that I can answer any questions that you may have. And when we're doing the Q&A, you're welcome to either unmute your mic and ask your question, or you can type your question in the chat box and I will respond to it. So while it's important to stay informed right now, there are some mental health well-being tips and strategies that I'd like to share with you that will help us to continue looking after ourselves so that we can maintain well-being and balance during these difficult times. I think the first thing that I would say, and if I can ask you please to mute your microphone, thank you for joining us. Please mute your microphone. Remember, when we're stressed, we focus on the stresses and we ignore everything else. When we're stressed, we focus on the stresses and we ignore everything else. I like this quotation by Natalie Goldberg, which says, stress is an ignorant state. Stress is an ignorant state. It believes that everything is an emergency. Stress is an ignorant state. It believes everything is an emergency. Focus on what you have control over. And I mean, I know it's something that's very easy to say and so not so easy to do. But the reality is that there's only so much that we can control. And that's what we need to focus our attention on. Right now, so much seems beyond your control. There is so much uncertainty. So focus on what you actually can control. Focus on what you have control over. When we focus on what we can't control, it often takes our energy and attention away from what we can control. And there's the rub. Focusing on what you can't control ultimately makes you less effective and potentially leads to the outcomes that we fear the most. The more time and energy we're spending on the things we cannot control, the less time and energy we're spending on the ways that we can make a difference. So let's go back to our chat box. Remember, I said I'd like us to make this an interactive conversation. Let's go back to our chat box. What are some of the things that you can control? What are some of the things that you have control over? Please feel free to just chat in the chat box. Feel free to just chat in the chat box. What are some of the things that you can control? Feel free to share and I will just share your thoughts. We're focusing on what we have control over. So one of the things that I have control over is my time, right? In the sense that I can still maintain some sort of a schedule. I can still wake up at a set time and I can still, allocate the time I have. Now, to be fair, managing that schedule has become a lot more complicated because I have two boys, for those of you who know. And so we're in a season of trying to do work because we're all working from home as a team, supporting our clients and managing their school work. Because they're having assignments sent to them by their teachers. We're utilizing Google Classroom for doing extra work. So trying to navigate that, has been a bit of, a juggle, figuring out at what time do I do the work, at what time do I work with the kids. But the reality is I have some element of control over my schedule. So that's something I can focus on, rather than, like I said, focusing on the things I have no control over. So Wanjiku, I like your comment. Wanjiku says, I have control over my sanity. Lena says, I can control how I react to things. Thank you very much. Angie, your day. Yes, just like me, you have control over your day, your schedule. Someone here says, I have control over my finances. Yes, and this can be a season where you either spend a lot or you save a lot and you manage the expenses that you have. Someone says, I can control my attitude. That's extremely important. Yes, you can control your attitude, how you look at this time that we have spending at home, how I spend my time. Thank you very much. I think that's Angie, I'm not sure, but she says, how I spend my time. So there are very many things that we have control over. Please keep sharing in the chat box, even as we move over to the next one. I'll keep referring to them. Sheila, thank you very much. I have control on how I respond to situations. Very true. And you know, Sheila, the point you make there is really important, and I guess it's in line with the comment about attitude, and it speaks to what we were speaking about earlier. This idea, and I think Lena, you said the same, controlling how you react to things. The reality is that, you know, often many of us operate on autopilot. We are not actually tuning in to the way we feel. And when you're on autopilot, you're less likely to be able to manage to navigate those emotions. And yet, when you tune into them, you're better able to manage them. You're better able to navigate them. We never want to suppress our emotions. What we want to do is navigate. Yes, so I can control, Kezi, thank you. I can control my expectations of myself and others in this season. I think that's really important, especially for those of us who are, you know, running businesses. What are your expectations of your team? For those of us who are home with our children, what are your expectations of your children? I saw a quotation that was doing the rounds on social media that talked about how, you know, our children will look back on this season. And it's really important to be mindful of how you wanted them to see this season as, and how this is an opportunity for us to build resilience in our children. And so we really need to be mindful. I like this one, work out more, so I can actually control my time and work out more, and healthier eating. I think that's really important. You know, when you spend the day at home, I don't know about you, but I can speak for myself. When I spend the day at home, I'm more likely to eat than just because you're somehow always finding yourself snacking. You know, I find often my children just open the fridge and they're just standing there looking. You know, and I keep saying, okay, you don't have to keep looking, but yes, so we can watch what it is we eat. And I think a big part of watching what we eat is making sure we have the right things in our houses at this time. So I can manage my social distance. Yes, that's very true. And I think that, you know, that's a really good point. It says Mugo. I think that's a really good point. We can also manage how we respond to the directives that we have been given, right? I think that's something that we have control over. So thank you very much for sharing. And as I said, you can keep adding, you know, things that you feel you have control over, and I will keep referring to them. So number one was, you know, focus on what you have control over. And remember this quotation that I said I love really a lot, which says, stress is an ignorant state. It believes that everything is an emergency. When we are in a state of stress, we tend to focus on the stresses. I keep telling my boys that what you focus on expands. So let's spend our time focusing on what we have control over and leave the rest to God. And, you know, I think that's a very good approach to take. The reality is that as much as we may feel that things are out of control, I believe that He has things in control. So I just need to do my part and allow Him to do His. The second thing I would say in terms of what we can do to help us navigate this season and make sure that we have a greater well-being and balance is that, you know, we can manage our media exposure. There are WhatsApp groups that I've actually exited. There are WhatsApp groups that I've actually exited because I just felt that the amount of information, or the type, not amount, the type of information that keeps being shared isn't actually information that's beneficial. I think it's really important that we manage our exposure to media coverage, as this can increase feelings of fear and anxiety. It's really important to know what's going on, definitely, but we can manage, and we can ensure that our sources of information are sources that are credible. And, you know, I'd really like to encourage you right now to also be aware of the kind of information that you are sharing. kind of forwards that you are sending at this time. Because the reality is that the things we read, the things we see will either increase our feelings of fear and anxiety, or will help to tamper them and help us to navigate them. So it's important that we have information. Very, very true. We must have information. We must know what's going on. We must be aware of the situation around us. But let's make sure that we focus on, what is beneficial to us. Be mindful of the sources of information and ensure that you're accessing good quality and accurate information. And then take ownership of your behavior. We're talking earlier about some of the things that we can control. And yes, Anne says, I can control how I respond to lots of information going on around COVID-19. And another one is I can limit social media consumption. So yes, let's make sure that we are not consuming more than what we can handle, because in the end it's not beneficial. There are so many WhatsApp groups, so many messages going around, and to be honest with you, a lot of those messages are not helpful. So let's manage our media exposure. The third thing that we can do is to show compassion and kindness. In these times of fear, isolation, both physical and social, and uncertainty, it's important that we strengthen our sense of community by connecting and supporting each other. Remind ourselves that we can manage this so much better in solidarity, and that COVID-19 does not discriminate. It can affect anyone regardless of age, gender, nationality, or ethnicity. So we should show compassion and kindness to one another. And I think this is really important. And I think the other thing we need to do is show compassion and kindness to ourselves. In this season, let's extend empathy to ourselves. Let's give ourselves a break. Let's make sure that we are looking after ourselves, because when we do that, we are better able to reach out and connect with others. So show compassion and kindness. The other thing I would say is we must stay connected. Research after the SARS pandemic in Hong Kong in 2008 provides evidence of the significance of connection through pandemics. It found that residents in Hong Kong experienced increased social connectedness, which offset the negative mental health impacts of the pandemic. Connection is so important at this time. And, I know the picture on the screen shows hands together. I'm not encouraging that we ignore the directive for social distancing, but there are very many ways that we can actually connect. There are very many ways that we can actually connect. One of the things that's amazing about the tools that we have today is that there are so many ways we can be connected, even when we are in our different spaces. So it's really important that we stay connected at this time. We're all in this together. So here are some tips that I'd like to share on how we can remain connected. I think the first thing I would say is, if there is someone that you think may struggle through isolation, someone who is on their own, make it a point to connect with them regularly in this period. So if you know someone, and whether that's someone in Kenya, whether that's someone abroad who is more prone to struggle through these periods of isolation, or someone who is on their own, so they live alone and so they are in isolation on their own, or they're staying at home on their own, make it a point to reach out to them. Make an effort to connect with them. Send them a message, pick up the phone and call them. Now is the time to really make an effort to connect with those within our networks. And don't underestimate the power of hope that you can extend to someone else. Coincidentally, yesterday, as we were doing our devotion, we were looking at the verse that says, give and it will come back to you. Full measure, pressed down, shaken together and running over. And as I was preparing for this presentation, it struck me last night that yes, it's true. When we give of ourselves during this time, we actually do get it returned to us. When we give, we're focusing less on the way we're feeling and our situation, and that by itself helps us and helps us to navigate and to find that element of balance. So reach out if there's anyone, make a list right now. I'd actually encourage you. I'd like to challenge you. Make a list of 5 people that you are going to go out of your way to connect with. And it doesn't necessarily have to be family members. It could be friends. It could be a work colleague that is alone at this time. A work colleague who is alone with young children, for example. make a note, and I'm going to give you 30 seconds right now. Write down names of people that you can connect with, because the reality is that you have the power to give hope to somebody else. So I'm going to stop talking for 30 seconds. And on that piece of paper or that notebook where you're writing your notes, just write down the names of 5 people that you are going to reach out to at this time. And later I'm going to talk about a challenge that I'm going to give you. But right now, just write down those names. So 30 seconds. My husband was telling me that as part of the initiatives that they are being encouraged to do in their workplace, one of the things they were encouraged to do was to have dinner online. Have you heard of that concept, that idea, that you can actually log into one of these methods of connecting, whether it's through WhatsApp, video, through Skype, or whatever it is, and actually sit around the table in all your different spaces and have dinner together and have a dinner conversation. How amazing is that? Can you imagine having dinner with someone who is thousands of miles away from you? So there are very many ways that we can stay connected, and that's one of them. Another is to find a buddy or to have a group where you set daily challenges with each other. So the daily challenges could be a healthy habit. You could agree that you will spend 15 minutes doing a workout every single day together. You could do a mindful practice. You can pray and fast together. One of the things that we've been doing as a team is we've been praying together on Mondays. So what are some of the things that you can do with a buddy or a group? Something creative, anything at all, and encourage each other and have a daily check-in. So have a daily check-in. You can set up a WhatsApp group where you post how you are adhering to the challenge. All right. So have a challenge that you set each other as a, find a buddy or as a group. That's another way that you can actually make sure you stay connected. Another thing you can do is you can set times to watch the same TV shows with someone and message each other your thoughts throughout the program. So you can sit down and say you're watching a particular show at the same time. And as you're watching it, have a conversation on WhatsApp and share your thoughts about what you're seeing, your thoughts about what you're watching, as if you were sitting side by side, the way that you would communicate. So that's another way that we can stay connected. There are so many ways. Those are just a few ideas of some of the things that we can do to stay connected. And I'd really like to encourage you to make sure that you connect with someone. So remember, I gave you a challenge, 5 people, write down 5 people that you will communicate with. Perhaps one of those 5 could be someone that you set up one of these arrangements with. Remember when I said the list of 5, it's just to reach out to them, to call them, to send them a WhatsApp, to send them a video WhatsApp, but you could also make this the person who becomes your buddy. Alternatively, this can be a buddy arrangement with someone completely different, and it can be with a group of you. Many of us have so many groups on WhatsApp. Why not use that group as a way to stay connected with everyone in the group and reaching out to them? We really don't know what we are all going through, and you'll be amazed at how a call, you'll be amazed at how watching a program together, you'll be amazed at having a challenge that you set each other, how that can make a really big difference for someone. There's a couple of challenges that I'd like to bring to your attention. I'm looking at my time. I want to make sure I leave enough time for Q&A after. So there's 2 more things I will share in terms of strategies. But before I move on to the next strategy, along the lines of being connected, there's 2 challenges I'd like to share with you. As I mentioned earlier, I'm part of the 6 Seconds global community, and 6 Seconds has a challenge. And what I'll do is if you go to the 6 Seconds website and look for the connection challenge. So the idea is to connect with someone for 10 days, connect with someone every day, and share how or post how that connection was. For more information, just go to the 6 Seconds website. So that's the number 6 and then seconds .org, the number 6 and then seconds.org, and look for connection. So that's another challenge that you can do that will help us to connect. And then this one is a challenge that's really fun for me. My sons and I started a challenge, and it's a 10-day challenge, and I'd like to ask you to join us on this 10-day challenge. So the idea of this 10-day challenge is on day one, you will send a video message to somebody. So anyone, send a video message to them, send a video message telling them that you are thinking about them, sending them some inspiration, whatever it is you'd like to say. So yesterday, my kids sent a video message to my sister-in-law telling her that they love her and miss her. So that was day one. On day two, you send a video message to a second person as well as the first person. All right, so day two of the challenge, you send a video message to a new individual. That's your second person. And you send a video message to the first person as well. And then you continue that way. Day three, you send a video message to a third person, whoever that third person is. And you send another video message to person number two and person number one. And at the end of the 10 days, that means you will have 10 different people that you are sending video message to. So my kids are really excited about this challenge. We started it yesterday. So that's another way that you can connect. So there are very many ways, like I said, that we can connect at this time. And as we connect with others, what we do is we actually help ourselves. Remember, this conversation is about well-being and balance in this time of crisis. I want to move on to some additional quick strategies that I will share that will really help us to understand how to cope with this season of quarantine. When we go into a period of social distancing, self-isolation or quarantine, we may feel overwhelmed. It can be daunting, and this can contribute to our feelings of helplessness and fear. So in addition to everything else I've talked about, I'd like to just say a few more things about specifically how to cope with quarantine. I think the first thing is just really going back to the conversation we had at the start about emotional intelligence is perspective. Try to see this time as unique and different, not necessarily bad, even though it's something you didn't choose. Focus on what you have control over, as we've discussed. Focus on how you can utilize this time. One of the things I've realized is I can utilize this time to really focus on going deep in my understanding of emotional intelligence. And so I have subscribed to a number of webinars on EQ. I have joined a number of training programs that we have as part of the 6 Seconds Network. Anything and everything that I can do. I have a number of books that I've lined up to read. So use this and change your perspective of this time. I mean, I'm not belittling what we're struggling through. I'm not belittling the fears that we have about our finances. For those of us who are running businesses, the fears that we have of whether or not that business will survive. I'm not saying that we belittle that. I'm not saying that we ignore that. But what I am saying is, let's focus on what we can control and change our perspective and consider this as a time that you can invest in yourself. I was on a webinar yesterday, and the gentleman who was leading the webinar, it was a webinar on selling in this time. So, sales are still going on. And, one of the things that he was saying is, as a salesperson, this is the best time to be in touch with your clients. So you may not close any deals, but it's the best time to be in touch with your clients. So what are some of the things that you can do in this time and utilize this time and just change your perspective? Stay connected with your values. Don't let fear or anxiety drive your interactions with others. We're in this together. Stay connected to your values. Stay connected to, your belief system. Have a daily routine. Have a routine that prioritizes the things that you enjoy and even things that you've been meaning to do, as I've said, that you haven't had enough time. Read that book, watch that show, take up that new hobby. And like I said, try and see this as a new and unusual period that might have some benefits. The last thing, the last tip that I would share and we're having a conversation for those of us who joined us later about how we can, strategies that we can utilize in this time that will help us, in order to find balance. The last thing I would say is really to help your children. For everyone who has children, remember that this is an uncertain time for everyone, and children can very well be impacted by fear and anxiety. So it's really important that you ensure your children are supported. How can you do that? I think number one, give your children extra attention and reassurance. For those who are young enough, and even those who are older, give them those extra cuddles, pay keen attention to them, put away your phone and focus on them for dedicated amounts of time. Just make sure that you really give them the support they need. Where possible, minimize the exposure to media and social media, anything that can heighten anxiety. It's important that our children know what is going on, but let that be something that you are sharing so that you can share a filtered version and just really focus on what is actually important. It's important to acknowledge your own feelings about the situation. One of the things that we talk about in the trainings we do about helping your children develop emotional intelligence is you must talk about how you feel. Obviously, the filtered version, talk about how you feel and help them to understand that emotions are data. It's okay to feel a certain way. What we must do is figure out how to navigate it. So let your children know it's okay for them to share their feelings. Never dismiss your children's feelings. Allow them to say how they feel and validate those emotions. And then include your children in plans and activities around the house. I know in very many households, children are doing chores. In here, my son has been baking up a storm. They've been contributing to cooking. So, let them participate in the different activities that you are doing around the home. So those are the tips that I would share with you, tips that will help us to find balance, tips that will, ensure well-being in this time of stress. The reality is that diamonds come about as a result of a lot of pressure. And this season of pressure really will define who we are. When we look back on this period, because we will get through it, it will come to an end. When we look back on this period, what do you want your response to have been? When we look back on this period, as we close and I open up for questions, what would you want your response to have been? Ask yourself that question. When we look back on this period, 6 months from now, 1 year from now, when we talk about this pandemic and how it changed our lives, maybe even forever, how would you want your response to have been? Because if you start with the end in mind, you're more likely to get that end. So what would you like your response to have been? How do you want to come out as a result of this pressure? We have an opportunity to be refined as diamonds. But if we want to take up on that opportunity, we need to actually be intentional. Emotional intelligence is about being more aware, being more intentional, and being more purposeful. Thank you so much for your time. My name is Mucha Mlingo, and I run an organization called PTS Africa. We're a boutique training and consultancy firm that leverages emotional intelligence to drive performance. We work with our clients and we provide programs for individuals, for teams, and for organizations, and help them to understand that emotions drive behavior. And so we need to be focusing on those emotions. At this time, I want to take any questions that you may have. And I'm happy to take your questions either through the chat box, or if you would like to unmute your microphone, you're more than welcome to share any questions you have. Thank you so much for the time. Those of you who may not be able to stay on with us all the way to the end, we have about 13 minutes left of the webinar. Thank you so much for joining. And at this time, I'd like to take any questions that you may have. Anyone with any questions, you can unmute yourself and ask your questions, or you can type your questions in the chat box. You're very welcome to share. Thank you. Thank you very much, Anne. You've typed in the 6 Seconds website, so that's 6seconds.org. Please make sure that you go to this. What I will say, if you have to leave, if you'd like to receive a link with the recording, we've recorded this webinar, please just type your email address in the chat box. So please type your email address in the chat box if you'd like to receive a link to this presentation, if you'd like to receive this presentation. So just type your email in the chat box so that we can share it with you. And you're more than welcome to share it with anyone else that you'd like to share it with. All right, so please just share. And anyone who has any questions. So I have a question here. How are you staying productive in managing a team? Thank you very much for that question. I think that what's key when you're managing a team is to have very clear expectations. So one of the things we worked on is a work plan. And that work plan has elements where we are working on some things as a team, and then some things we are working on as individuals. So have a very clear expectations, and then manage those expectations. Be mindful that people are home, they're home with their children, they're having to juggle things, so they may not be able to deliver in the kind of timeline. But at the same time, what I have found is that when we are home and focused, you're actually able to do more work sometimes, especially work that you're working on as an individual. So have very clear expectations is the first thing. Manage those expectations. Be realistic about what is possible to be achieved, and then have regular check-ins. So we have a daily huddle with my team, and first thing in the morning, we just touch base, and that way it allows me to provide whatever support the team needs. And then we have end of day kind of touch base, which we use on WhatsApp. So that's just really touching base on how your day has been. One of the things that we also do is different individuals in the team reach out to each other. So that it's not always me doing the reach out, me doing the connecting. I've really empowered other members of the team to also make sure that they connect with each other. For those of you who have larger teams, for those of you who have different levels of management, get managers to check on other departments, team members, all right? So be very intentional about connecting. I think that I can't emphasize that enough. Be very intentional about the connecting that you do. So number one, have very clear expectations in this time. Number two, manage your expectations. Be realistic about what can be achieved. Make sure that you are connecting regularly. So we have a daily huddle in the morning to touch base with each other. And at the end of the day, in the daily huddle, we use GoToMeeting. And then at the end of the day, we just do an update with each other on WhatsApp. We have a Monday meeting, which is a bit more in-depth, where we actually share what it is we're doing, what we're working on. So the connection piece is really important. The other thing I would say is, focus on some of those things that you've been meaning to do as an organization, but you haven't been doing. A friend of mine, Carol, talks about how, you can utilize this time of crisis. So are there some things that you've not always done, that you haven't done, that you've been meaning to do? This is the time to do them. So there are some webinars that we're doing as a team. There are some projects we are working on. We're currently working with Roslyn of Top Tier to, streamline, where we are as an organization. And so that's something we're intentionally working on in this season. So look for things that you can work on as a team that will actually, that you've been meaning to do and you haven't. I just want to scroll and have a look at any other questions. I see a question here about how can I, how can you stay productive at work during these times when you have all kind of thoughts? I think stop trying to control the thoughts. Do exercises, do self-reflective exercises. I'm not sure, I can't see who this is. It says H. Muraj. I'm not sure if you were with us when I started. There's a self-reflective exercise we did. Spend time with yourself, I think. So the question, for the benefit of everyone, is how can you be productive at work during these difficult times when you have all kinds of thoughts running through your mind and so much going on around you? I think spend time on yourself, spend time reflecting, spend time developing greater self-awareness. So one of the exercises we did is to just write down how it is you're feeling, and then ask yourself, if this emotion is a friend, if it is here to give me insight, to help me, to give me advice, what is this emotion telling me? So get in touch with those feelings. The reality is those thoughts, those emotions running around in your mind are actually insight and data. So get to know them better. Use this time to get to know yourself better. So please try and really focus on that information and don't ignore it. Don't suppress it. We have a habit of suppressing our emotions. Don't do that. I like to think of it as kind of picking them out of the basket, looking at them and trying to figure out what insight they're trying to give you. So really spend time right now reflecting. If you are someone who can journal, write down how you're feeling. This is the time to develop that habit of journaling. Write it all down, do a brain dump, everything that's running through your mind, on a daily basis. Just spend 30 minutes with yourself, just brain dumping. The reality is that when we allow ourselves to kind of remove those thoughts in our minds and put them down, look at them, reflect, and ask yourself what that insight. Remember, emotions are those feelings you're feeling. It's a resource. It's just that we've not gone into the habit of using it. So use it as a resource. Utilize it. Pick out, and then ask yourself which of those emotions, or which of those things, or which of those thoughts are a lie. All right, and intentionally tell yourself that this is not true, and then focus on what you have control over. The things you have no control over, you can't really do anything about them. So focus your attention on the things you have control over. I mean, for me, one of the things I'm doing a lot is just reflecting in prayer, claiming God's word. Where I feel fear, I claim God's word about what he says, fear is and how we can utilize fear. So there are a number of ways that you can do, and I hope that I have answered that question. I love the 10 challenge, an overview of challenges. I mentioned challenge, and I also mentioned the 10-day challenge. Caroline, I love the part about staying together, connected, having dinner together. Yes, thank you very much. Oh, wow, it's your daughter's birthday tomorrow. Happy birthday for tomorrow. You'll have an online dinner. I love that. And Carol, make sure when you have the online dinner, go all out, find those favorite dishes, the ones that you save for, use those, set the table nicely, and engage children during this period and not transfer anxiety. I felt very tired in my mind because of spending more time with them for schoolwork, working from the house. What can I do better? I think that, guys, we have a limited amount of time. One of the things I shared earlier, that I gave myself the permission to do what I am able to do, especially with the children. We have work that has been sent from school, but I think that our priority as parents right now should be our children's well-being. As far as their education is concerned, I'm not saying throw away the school books, but I'm saying focus on their well-being. So what that means is, don't put yourself under so much pressure to do everything that you have been asked to do. I'm sorry if there are any teachers here, don't shoot me, but that's the approach I've taken. That we'll look at the assignments that have been handed out and we'll work on what we can work on. We will try and do it together, figure out how we can make it more fun, and then don't try and do it all at once. Give yourself breaks. If you have kids like mine, their attention span is not that great. So give yourself breaks. Do something for 15 minutes, take a break, go outside, go for a walk, come back, do another. What I've realized is that when we have focused attention like that, we are more likely to be more productive. I think that's, yeah, it's those are some of the things that I would say, but I think give yourself a break is the main thing I would say, Benjamin. You may not be able to do everything, so ask yourself, what are the most important things to do? And I think one of those most important things to do is to connect with your children. One of the things I realized when we were starting to do this work and I was putting myself under pressure to get everything done, what I realized was happening was I was getting irritable, and I was now transferring that to the children. I need to be in a state of emotional balance so that I can transfer that to my children. And part of that is just removing some of the things that are on my plate. So Benjamin, I hope that's helped. Any other question? How can I support my teenage children who want to use their phone and be in their bedrooms most of the day? Being strict isn't working. I don't have teenage children, but what I would say is do things together. Figure out what it is that they like to do and do it together. Don't be too no on the screen time, because again, that's not helpful. Come up with an agreement. A friend of mine, Evelyn Casina, always talks about how you can come up with agreement, and agreement means you discuss it together. So discuss with your teams, come up with, okay, so this is the day. What does the day look like? How can we make sure that we use this day productively? So I would say have a conversation and then do stuff together. The reality is, in today's environment, you need to be involved in your children's world. So if it means, putting down your work, your work that you're doing and getting online and playing an online game with them, then do that. So I would say work together. I'm running out of time. I see 2 minutes here, so I may not be able to answer every single question here. I hope that I have answered the bulk of them. But if you have put your email address and a question is here, what I'll do is when I shoot out the email. I will respond to your questions individually. So if you have any other questions, please do post them. I may not be able to share them right now, but I will definitely connect with you individually. Connect with us online. We are on social media at Mucha Mlingo. Let me actually type that in, or actually no. And if you can help me type in our social media handle. So it's at Mucha Mlingo for me as an individual, at PTS Africa. We are daily sharing insights, tips to navigate this season. This webinar, this series of webinars will be weekly. So diarize next week, same time. We'll spend another hour together talking about how to make sure we enhance our well-being during this season. So we're planning on a 6-week series. We have a number of programs that we're also running. Coming up soon is our Raising Humans program, which is an online learning on developing emotional intelligence for parenting. So again, once we have your email address, we'll make sure that we touch base with you. Thank you so much for your time. I want to honor it. It is now 1 minute to 9, so I want to close. Remember, we will share the recording. I will respond to any questions that I did not get a time or a chance to respond to fully. So please do just type any questions you still have. We will transcribe everything in the chat, and I'll, when I have a minute, go through it message by message. So if I missed your question, when I send out the email, I'll either respond to you individually, or if I feel it's something everyone will benefit from, I will respond to you all. So thank you very much. It is now 10 o'clock. I'll allow you to get on with your day. And I want to remind you, emotional intelligence is about being more aware, being more intentional, and being more purposeful. So thank you very much, and God bless you.